Here we go again. I know you guys like sitting around the tailgate telling stories with good buddies, cracking cold ones. No matter if it's hunting season or fishing season, well, so does the Outdoor Drive podcast. So we're going to bring you Tales from the Tailgate. All right, East Coast Trev back at it again with my good buddy Madman Mardik. What's up, bud?
What up, brother?
Hey, man, appreciate you jumping on. And we have Ted Hubele from all the way out west. What's up, man? How are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
Doing well, doing well. Did I even say your last name right? Did I say it right?
Probably not.
It's Hubele.
Hubele. Oh, okay.
Told you.
So I'm known as the worst guy to pronounce your name. Probably shouldn't use me. I failed at that. And the English language is probably not my first language. I probably know like Arabic or something. It's probably best because I can't pronounce a name to save my life. So, Ted, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do.
My name is Ted Hubele. I'm from Thermopolis, Wyoming. I'm 39, born and raised right here in Wyoming, and love the outdoors.
Yeah,
it's pretty much what we do all year long. So.
That's awesome. What is your normal day job?
I'm a CNC machinist.
Oh, okay.
I specialize in like downhole oil field tooling, and a little bit of we dabble in a little bit of the gun trade, making gun parts and stuff.
You must love that. That's right up your alley, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So
yeah. So you had the opportunity to shoot a bighorn sheep out there. Was that your first hunt in doing so, or no?
Yeah. So to draw a bighorn sheep tag in Wyoming is extremely difficult for a resident. We have a preference point system for specialty game like moose, bighorn sheep, mountain goat, and bison. And so you have to collect so many bonus points to even be able to draw a tag like that. But they do give 10%. So like the unit that I drew, they gave out 20 tags, and 4 of those went to non-resident, and 2 of those went to what they call a random draw. So that can be anybody. So it takes 24 points to draw a sheep tag, more or less. So you got to put in for it for 24 years. And it takes 24 points to draw it, but they give out 10% of those tags are random draw. Now, a random draw can be somebody with no points or somebody with max points that didn't draw. They just pull 2 random numbers out. And that's what I did. I only had 4 points in the hat, and I drew it. And I did the math on it. It was 0.07% drawing on to get a random tag. And I was one of 2 people to draw it. And funny thing is, a guy down the highway here, maybe 3 miles down the road, he drew the other random tag for area 2.
Oh, wow. Shake him up.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, we both got extremely lucky.
Wow. That's a cool hunt too. I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes into that. That's not just going out and shooting a mule deer on the flats or a big whitetail. That's a whole different ball game of a hunt.
Right. Yeah, like I wasn't even really prepared to draw this tag. Like I figured I wasn't going to draw it until I was 60. And I should have been putting in for it years ago, but I just like, I need to start putting in. I don't know what I've been doing. And so I've been putting in, and so I drew it, and then it kind of all hit me at once. Like this, I only put in for that area because I've seen sheep from the highway in the past driving through. So I was just like, well, I'll just throw my points on area 2. And if I get lucky and draw that random tag, then I'll kind of have an idea where to start. But then once I actually drew it, I was just like, I really don't have any idea where to start. So, so it's kind of a big shocker, but yeah, it was pretty cool to draw it on the random tag.
Now, is that a self-guided hunt that you could do on your own, or is it something that you have to hire a guide to do, or is it better to hire a guide?
You can absolutely do it on your own. So, like I said, I put in for area 2 only because I've driven, it's right on the edge of Yellowstone. Area 2 borders Yellowstone. It's just north of Cody, and it runs all the way up to Yellowstone Park. And as you're going to the park, I've seen sheep, and there's a ski resort right there, and I see sheep later in the season when they're breeding and they winter down there. And so I've seen sheep there. So that's why I applied for it. And but area 2 is extremely rugged. It's straight up, straight down, vertical. There's not a whole lot of timber. The Yellowstone fire from the 80s burned all the timber, most of the timber out of that unit, and it's riddled with grizzly bears. There's grizzly bears everywhere. And so going into it after I drew it, really sitting down and thinking about it is like, for one, it's so steep and nasty country, and it's full of bears. And this year, the Game and Fish made it where these specialty tags are now, as of this year, they're once in a lifetime. So once you draw it, you can never apply for it again. And so with it being a once in a lifetime and the ruggedness and everything, I opted to hire a guide.
Wow. So you thought you were going to draw it at 60. You did it at a younger age. Is it better to do? Are you glad that you did it now and got it up and out of the way than having to do it down the road?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a steep, rugged hunt. There are some units that aren't nearly as bad as far as terrain goes, but area 1 and 2 are renowned for being just steep, rugged, nasty country.
Wow. Well,
can you still put in for those other species specialty tags, or you just get your one? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can't. I can hunt. I can put in for a ewe, but I can never put in for a ram.
Okay, that's what I thought.
In the state of Wyoming again.
Wow.
So,
well,
and that just changed this year. They used to have a 5-year waiting pool, so if you drew it, you had to wait 5 years, and then you could start applying again. But everybody that was inside that pool and everybody that drew this year are out, and you can't hunt no more.
Jeez.
So.
Well, I'm intrigued, man. Take us through the story and how it all went down from start to finish, man, because I want to hear about this.
Okay. So like I said, I have 5 kids at home, and we all put in for sheep and moose, and put my wife in for moose. We had 6 of us in for moose, 5 in for sheep. The moose tag, we don't have very many points between all of us. The moose tag is a higher chance of getting a random tag. So I was just opened up our emails and was checking everybody's emails after the draw results came out. It kind of the sheep wasn't even on my mind because I knew there's no way we're drawing a sheep tag. But I was really checking to see if anybody got lucky and drew that moose tag. And everybody didn't get anything. And I opened up mine and it said successful. So at first I thought I drew a moose tag. So I was super happy. And then I really started reading the fine print. I'm like, holy crap, I drew the sheep tag, not the moose tag. And so from there, I called my dad and kind of went over the whole scenario, because my dad used to guide hunters in the 80s up there in that same country. And so talking with him and kind of spread the word around. But then after 3 or 4 days of really thinking about it, and the Game and Fish gives your information out to all these outfitters and taxidermists. So I was getting calls from outfitters and taxidermists and this and that. And Todd Helms with Eastman's Hunting Journal, a magazine that's produced right here close to us. He reached out to me and said if I was looking for a guide, if I was going to go that direction, that he had some referrals. And so I took his referrals down, and then I talked to a couple other guys, and everybody kept pointing to the same guy. His name's Josh Martolio. He's out of Cody, Wyoming, so he lives right there in Area 2. And everybody's just like, he's the best of the best. And so I reached out to Josh, and 5 minutes on the phone with him, I knew he was the guy to go with. Got on his website, and he's killed probably 250 rams in the last 10 years. And his last 5 years, he's running like 99% kill rates. And I looked through every picture that he's ever put on his website, and every one of those rams were studs. And I was just like, that's the guy I'm going with. So we went ahead and booked the hunt through Josh. So the season's long. It runs from September 1st to the end of October. And Josh had 3 people booked up for Area 2 already. And he hunts all the units. Like he had 20 hunters this year. And it's spread out through all the different units and whatnot. And he had 3 hunters booked in Area 2. One of them was an early hunt. The other one, he said, was the last 7 days. And he said, as far as me, we can float it in whenever I wanted to. But he highly suggested we waited till mid-October, because if we get a little bit of weather in, a lot of the sheep would move out of the park and come start moving down into the winter range, and it could double the population of sheep just in a matter of a couple of days if we got a heavy snow. So we booked it up for October 10th, and so it was pretty hard sitting around the house all through September knowing I could be up there hunting. But I talked to a couple of buddies. One guy knows Josh, and I was like, man, what would you do? So would you go up there and try to hunt on your own, or would you wait and go with Josh? Because I'd hate to go up there and misjudge a ram and shoot something that I would regret. And he said, if you're going with Josh, I would 100% wait. He said he'd put you on a big one. And so I sat back and waited and watched everybody's hunting pictures roll in all through September, which was extremely hard. But the morning of the 10th, met up with Josh, and right off the bat, I had a big duffel bag. So he sent me a checklist of stuff to bring. So I had a huge duffel bag full of, rain gear and snow gear and boots and all this stuff, because we're supposed to pack in and set up a big camp and hunt for 10 days out of this camp. But he told me, he's like, we had an elk hunter in this drainage is called the Grizzly Creek. And then he said he had an elk hunter in Grizzly Creek 3 or 4 days prior to this. And the guide that was with the elk hunter spotted a really big ram. And he said, we're going to go in after this ram specifically for 2 days. And if we don't find him, we're going to back out and double around and come in from the backside of the mountain, and we'll set up a camp and we'll hunt the rest of the week out on the backside of the mountain. And he said, what you're wearing right now. So as I had my day's gear on, he's like, you're going to take that, your pack, your spotting scope, your sleeping bag, and maybe a hoodie, and that's it. So we're just going to sleep under the stars for a couple of nights. He said, this stuff is so steep and so nasty, we can't even set up a tent. There's not a flat spot on the whole mountain. And so the first day we got up there, we rode in, and he was right. It's just, all those drainages are straight up, straight down. It's all burned timber that's knocked down. There's down timber. We're cutting logs, and the horses are jumping over down trees. And it was probably a good 6-7 mile ride in on horses and mules. And then we finally get back to this huge basin in the back, and we're glassing from the ridge that we're sitting on. Probably 1.5 miles in front of us is this huge rock bluff that runs for, I don't know, it shoots up from probably 9,000 feet to well over 10,000 feet, and it runs probably 4 or 5 miles wide. And we sat there and we're glassing right. He said, just focus on right on the timber line, right at that 10,000 foot mark. That's where all them sheep are hanging, just on the edge of the timber. And we sat there for 7 or 8 hours glassing that basin back and forth with our spotting scopes. And then that first day, we picked up 16 rams that first day, but none of them were big enough to go after and make a plan on. Towards the end of the day, Josh took off and went one way, and we had 2 other guides with us, Kelly and Eduardo. And Eduardo went to the right and went and looked into Grizzly Creek. We were one drainage over from Grizzly Creek. And so Eduardo went and looked at Grizzly Creek, and he radioed over and said that he had glassed up another 6 rams or so, but it was right at dark, and we didn't get a look at them. So we rode to the bottom. We had to ride probably 2.5, 3 miles down the mountain before we found a place big enough to set up 4 cots on the creek so the horses could water, and just cooked dinner over a fire, just slept right on the ground, and got up the next morning, and we went up to where Eduardo was the day before. And by the time we got up that ridge, the mule I was on was slower than molasses. And so I fell way behind. And so by the time we got way up on top of the ridge, looking into Grizzly Creek, it was probably about 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning. And the fog had started setting in. There was no weather in the forecast, so I didn't even really bring my rain gear with me. And the fog set in, and then after the fog, it was just snowing like crazy. And then the sun would pop out, and so we started glassing, and the sheep were popping up right and left all over the place. And then, but again, we found the group that Eduardo had seen. There was one really nice ram in there, but he was probably only 6 or 7 years old. And Josh opted to pass him. He said, he's pretty, but he's just too young. And so we kept looking, and the fog came in, and the snow came in, and then the sun would come out, and that repeated about every 30 minutes for, I don't know, good 2 or 3 hours. About every 30 minutes, the weather would change. And so the last time it started snowing, it actually held for about 45 minutes. It just snowed on us like crazy. So we started a fire and we just kind of sat around up there. We were about 9,500 feet. And so we got on the backside of this rock wall with a fire going and just sat around and BS for a while. And then the sun came up. And then that time when the sun came up, Josh said, we're going to look. He said about that time, it was about 10:30, 11 o'clock. He said, we're going to look for another 30 minutes. And then we're pulling the plug. He thought that ram had probably went up and over that big rock basin and was on the backside of the mountain. And so we were going to pull the plug in about 30 minutes and we were going to ride back down and spend the day driving around the backside of the mountain and heading up. So we all split up and started glassing. So this is the morning of day 2. So we're glassing. Again, we're looking a mile and a half up into that rock basin. And every time the sun would come up, we'd glass up more sheep. And they just kept popping up and popping up and popping up. But again, nothing big. Lots of real young rams. We did find one big band of ewes and lambs. And then trying to think, we were literally about to start kicking the fire out and call it quits. And Josh had went up and over this rock cropping to my left to get on the radio with Eduardo. He was down another drainage or so from us, looking in a different drainage. He was on the radio with him, telling him to come back. And when he was coming back over that rock pile, he was all crunched down, all low to the ground, and he was belly crawling over that rock pile. So right then I was like, okay, he sees something close to us because he's being all sneaky. And he got over to us and he's like, man, we're looking, like I said, a mile and a half up this drainage, up probably looking another 1,000 foot in elevation. And he's like right below us. And we looked literally right below us, 1,000 yards below us in the bottom of the Grizzly Creek. There's 5 rams bedded in the wide open. And once you got the spot and scope on them, they're all just laying there looking at us. So they've been there all morning watching us. But we were looking so far out, we never even thought about looking right below us along the creek. And so once we got the spot and scope set up on them, right off the bat, the one in the middle of the group was the long ram that we were after. And so he's like, that's the guy right there. But he's like, man, that other one that's with him is big and heavy and dark horn and broomed off. There's another one that's real heavy, but he's about a half curl younger, and then 2 smaller rams. And so, but the problem was they've been watching us for hours. And so he's like, we got to make a move on them, but I don't want to just drop off this face because they're watching us. So we put the fire out, moved the horses on the backside of the ridge, and then me and Josh actually took off and went up the ridge, probably a good half a mile. And no matter how far up we went, we could still see them, and we were still in sight. So we just eventually we got up. We're like, oh, we're a good mile from them. So we dropped off the backside of that ridge and scurried to the bottom as quick as we could. And we opted to stay on our side of the drainage because the Grizzly Creek is a big, steep, nasty creek bottom. It's all bouldery and down trees and waterfalls. And he's like, let's stay on our side and we'll side hill it and get across from him and then try to get a shot at him from across the drainage. And we moved 3 or 4 different times and set up. And the guys up on the ridge were radioing us, telling us that, they're still bedded down or up, they're getting up. And we set up a couple different times, and it's too thick being across trying to shoot through all that down timber and stuff. And we just didn't have any windows. And so our last ditch effort was about this. This was about 2 o'clock. And he's like, we got to get this ram shot soon or else we're going to be in here in the dark. And he said, they call it Grizzly Creek for a reason. So we got to get out of here before it gets dark. And so we opted to jump down in the creek and just run down the creek as fast as we could. He said he's worried that if we ran past the drainage that they were in, that the thermals would push our scent up the creek and they would smell us because they were only up that drainage maybe 300 yards. And so we got down there, we got to the drainage that they were in, and we just hightailed it across. We went past the next drainage, and on the third drainage past them, there was a big ridge that was way taller than the ridge they were on. So we got around the backside of that and came up the backside. And as soon as we popped over the top of that ridge, they were right there, like 350 yards, bedded in this wide open gray shale. I mean, just perfect. And there was a nice big fluffy pine tree between us. So we just walked right up to that pine tree and scooted to the side of it, and there was a down tree that had roots sticking up, and I was able to just scoot right up into those roots and lay my rifle right across the roots, and it was like shooting right off a bench. And so we sat there, and they had moved and shuffled around, so we were watching them with the spot and scope for a minute to make sure we got the long one and all this. And we get the long one's right in the middle of the pod. There's the long one. There's three of them bedding around him, and the big heavy broomed off one is kind of up above him, and he's laying quartering away. And the big long one that we're after, he's laying right in the middle. But the way he was laying, I couldn't shoot him right there, so we'd have to wait for him to stand or call to him or something, or move positions. And about that time, Eduardo's up on the ridge a half a mile above us, and he radios down to us, and he said he's pretty sure that long one, his left horn is freshly broken off, and because they broom him off and stuff, and he's like, I'm pretty sure his left horn is broomed. And so we kept looking at him, and eventually he did turn his head, and we could see that his left horn was freshly broomed off. Then at that point, it's like, well, I don't know if I want to shoot one that's got a fresh break on one side. And honestly, that one that was laying at the top of the group, the big, heavy, dark horned one, I told Josh, I said, that one is everything I'm looking for. I said, I wanted an old, heavy, broomed off ram. So the long one's pretty and stuff, but with him broke on that one side, I didn't want to shoot him. And so, and the heavier broomed off one was in a better shooting position. And he was quartering pretty hard, but I told Josh, I'm pretty confident I can squeeze one right in there by his hip and squeeze one in there and get it done. And so we radioed up to Eduardo, and he actually put the phone scope on, and from his position way up on the ridge, he was able to video the whole thing.
Oh, that makes sense.
And yeah, so got it all settled in, and it was all good. I was like, yeah, I'm dead solid and all that. And as soon as I flicked that safety off, I don't get buck fever, but as soon as that safety clicked, I started shaking a little bit. So I had to rein it back a minute, and then get settled in again. And the shot rang off, and in the video, it doesn't look like it's that steep, but they're on the side of a steep embankment. And so after the shot went off, in the recoil and the scope, I can see all 5 rams jumping off that embankment. And I didn't hear any report like a hit or a thud or nothing. Josh was watching through his 60 power spot and scope, and I asked him, said, did I hit him? And he's like, I didn't see nothing. And so the first thing that goes through my head is, I just messed this up. I just missed. He's like, I didn't see no dirt. I didn't hear a whop, nothing. But they ran to the bottom of the drainage. So we just dropped our packs, left everything there, just grabbed the rifle, and we started skirting up the ridge as fast as we could. And Eduardo had started watching the video and radioed down to us and said, yeah, you hit him right on that last rib. You know, you sank one in him. And that was a huge relief. I was like, okay, I got him. And then they radioed back and said, yeah, he just went up and over the ridge into the timber, maybe 50 yards in front of you. I was like, so he went all the way to the bottom and made it all the way to the top. And right as we creased the top into the timber, he was right there in the timber right in front of us. And I was going to shoot him, but then I was like, well, I don't know if that's him. I don't want to shoot more than one. So we had to wait to make sure it was him. And then the other 4, a couple seconds later, came out on a big rock bluff above us. And so I was like, okay, that's definitely him. So I had to move positions. He was probably 60 yards away in the timber, and he turned and went down into the bottom and was coming up the other side of that. And I shot him again, square in the back, and it just dumped him. And I was like, all right, good, one and done. And then he got back up and he started moving down the drainage again. So I put another shell in and put another one in him, and he's still moving. But then I was just like, all right, I'm just going to let him sit. And so I was like, I got 3 shots in him. They all felt good. And then Josh doubled back and got on the radio and helped guide those guys down, which I'm still amazed that they were able to get the mules down that nasty drainage. But they got the mules all the way down to the creek bottom off the cliff face. And so that gave me about 20 minutes by myself. So I gave him a good 5 minutes, and I walked down there real slow. And right where I last saw him, he was laying there dead. So it gave me a good 15 minutes with him, just kind of look him over and kind of run over everything in my head. So But yeah, it was pretty incredible, pretty awesome. And it was supposed to be a 10 to 12 day hunt, and we got one shot on day 2.
So when you were sitting there with them and you got an extra couple of minutes with them without anybody else there, like what was going through your mind? Like, this is a once in a lifetime tag. You got it done in a couple of days time. Like, so what's going through your head and through your mind?
Honestly, I was in shock because, for one, that stalk that we did. So we spotted those sheep at about 11, and I shot him at 3:30. So that was a good 4 hour stalk, and that's one of the hardest hikes I've ever been on. So my legs were dead. I'm dying. I'm breathing. I'd gotten really bad, almost like strep throat, like 3 weeks prior to my hunt. So my lungs were on fire and going through the whole thing. But yeah, just sitting there and was just going through everything in my mind, and it was mind blowing, honestly.
Has it really sunk in that you have a once in a lifetime tag and that you got it and it's over now? That
It's getting there. It's getting there. The horns are at the taxidermist. He's actually gonna mount him up and take him to Reno to the sheep show in January. So instead of having to wait a year, he's gonna have it mounted here in a couple of weeks and have it go show ready and ready for Reno. And but yeah, about, I don't know, 5 times a day I get on my phone and look at the pictures. But,
That's amazing, though. That's a cool hunt. And you're obviously were probably freezing because you didn't have all the gear that you wanted. It's snowing. You didn't expect that.
it really wasn't too bad. Like, I don't know, while it was snowing, it was still probably 40 degrees. It was windy, but I just put on my heavy coat, and with that fire we had going, just anytime the snow would sock in, the wind, we just hunker up against that rock by the fire, and it wasn't too bad. And then once the sun broke out, once the stalk started, it probably warmed up to 50 degrees. And so I had already shed my heavy coat, and then that 3 hour sprint down the mountain to try to get set up on them really warmed me up. So
Especially
yeah,
when
so
you're
we got
not
them
ready
all
for
packed
it.
out. So we came down, we got pictures of them and all that. And then the other guys, like I said, they got the mules down that ridge. And at one point during the stalk, Josh was like, in case this doesn't work and we don't shoot this ram, he pointed back up to where Eduardo and Kelly were. He's like, do you think you can hike up that drainage? And I looked up. I mean, it's straight up. It's like a half a mile, and it's straight up. I was like, well, if I shoot this sheep, it would definitely help. but yeah, so we got them all packed out, and then we opted just to go straight to the truck, just get out of there. So we're on the trail. Hell, we probably ended up riding in the dark down that mountain for. We ended up switching mules, so I wasn't riding the slow mule on the way out because it ended up getting dark on us, and we rode for probably 2 hours in the dark, and we got back to Cody probably about 11 o'clock or so.
Wow.
And, so yeah, the whole thing only lasted about 48 hours, but it was pretty awesome 48 hours.
It sounds like you got the full
So,
experience.
I think I think we ended up counting. We glassed up, I think, 26 bighorn rams in 2 days, and I took them to you got to take them to the Fish and Game office within, I think you got 10 days, and they age them, and then they drill a hole in the back of your horn, which that's pretty hard to watch. They get a drill bit out and they drill a 1/2 inch hole in the back of your horn, and they put a plug in it. So that plug has the date. So it's a 2020 ram, and my plug number is 089. So mine was the 89th ram killed in Wyoming that year. And they actually they glue it right in the back of the horn. It's kind of on the backside of the curl, so you can't see it. But even if you find a dead sheep, you have to take it in and get it plugged. And so I stopped by the Game and Fish office, and they drilled it out and plugged it. And one of the wardens was there, and he had just ridden in Grizzly Creek just a couple days ago, and he said he saw one ram. I was like, well, we saw 26 in 48 hours. He was like, oh man, that's either gotten a lot better. I missed a bunch, but.
So you think that snowfall had definitely, was there that weather window that you guys were looking for?
I don't think where we were at, I don't think it affected. We had got a heavy snow a couple weeks prior to that, but he was hoping if we got heavy snow, we would be up hunting right on that Yellowstone border, but we were still probably 20 miles off of it.
Okay.
So he's like, yeah, if it snows heavy, we'll move right up on that borderline and we'll hunt that high stuff right there and catch them coming over the park. But we were actually pretty low as far as down the mountain from Yellowstone, maybe a third of the way up.
And so
So,
with it being a once in a lifetime tag, it's probably not a cheap experience neither.
um, for a resident, for us, the tag was $140.
Oh,
So it's not super pricey for a resident. Like I think a non-resident, I don't even know what they jumped it up to, but it's several grand for a non-resident
see,
to buy that tag. But
that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that this is, it's a once in a lifetime tag, and you're not ready for it to go for it. So it's expensive. You know what I'm saying? It's an expensive trip, but being a
yeah,
resident, it's not all that bad. I mean, considering. I
it's
mean,
not. Like I said, I opted to use a guide. That was pretty expensive,
hmm
but being a once in a lifetime, and like I said, Josh is is the best of the best, and he proved it right there. I mean,
mm.
two days in the hunt, and he just put a post up online that they killed 20 sheep this year. They had 20 hunters booked, and they killed 20 sheep. He
So,
went 100% success rate, and all of them were studs.
oh, I know you had sent me
Mm.
them, and I couldn't believe it. They were some absolutely gorgeous sheep, like amazing.
Yeah,
Yours did have
yeah,
the
and he
best
hunts.
coat, though. You said.
Yeah, mine's got a hell of a cape on him. His cape is just absolutely perfect. So,
If you're gonna do it, you might as
but
well
yeah,
get the
they
best
killed
one.
some big ones.
What does something like that generally weigh? I don't know anything about bighorn sheep.
So a ram weighs around 350 pounds on the hoof.
Okay.
A big mature ram. So they're bigger than a mule. They're not quite as big as an elk. They're
Right.
they're about the size of a deer. They're just stocky. They just got a lot of muscle mass to them. When I got done, after I caped off the head and everything, and I had the skull alone, I think it weighed 24 pounds. The skull. So with the horns and everything on it, just the with the bottom jaw removed and everything, it was 100 or 24 pounds. So they got a solid head on them.
That's nuts. That's so
It's
cool.
awesome.
That's a crazy hunt. I couldn't even imagine. Especially not us, especially coming from out east to have to go up there and be at 9,000, 10,000 feet. Like I would lose my mind, like breathing. You're a little bit more used to it living there, obviously.
Well, where I live here in Thermop, we're about 4,000 foot.
Okay.
So I mean, but Cody, where I hunted, it's less than 2 hour drive. So we're going from 4,000 foot to 9,000 foot in just in a couple of hours. I did a little bit of training, not a whole lot, but I did a little bit of training. We got a big hill here in town that's probably 1,000 vertical feet, and it's straight up. And I was not running, but I was climbing that hill before work a couple times a week, and doing it pretty good with some ease. And I was like, I got it licked, but then I got sick. But I think the hardest part was the elevation, going from doing it 4,000 feet is one thing, but you go up to 10,000 feet
Mm.
and you run that same hill, and it kicks the crap out of you.
Yeah, and it's not like
So,
you
and
had
then
much.
Josh and those guys,
Oop, go ahead.
go ahead, sir.
Oh no, it's not like you
I
had
was gonna
much
say
time to
Josh and
train
those
for
guys.
it. Oop.
No, and then Josh and those guys, they just left me in the dust every time we'd get off and do any walking. They're 100 yards ahead of me at all times, and but they do it for a living. They're up there from August till November, December, running for elk, deer, antelope, sheep, mountain goats, and yeah, those guys are incredibly in shape.
So now that you've
But
punched the sheep tag, like what else is in store for you? Like what else do you do at that point? Like you've hit the top of it, and where else do you go from there?
yeah, I mean, uh, sheep was definitely my number one on the list. Like if I had to shoot anything, sheep. I'm still putting in for moose. Mountain goat that's probably the hardest tag to draw. I honestly haven't even been putting in for that. I just don't have a burning desire to go shoot a mountain goat. But moose for sure. Possibly even start putting in for buffalo one of these years. Buffalo are a little easier to draw. Um, but that's a once in a lifetime hunt. But the buffalo hunting's getting harder and harder every year, and so probably moose, or I'm going to really start focusing. The nice thing now is we have 4 kids that are all old enough to hunt now, so they're pretty much filling the freezer. And so I'm going to start putting in. I really want to shoot a big world-class mule deer. So I've shot a lot of mule deer. I just have never shot one over that 180 mark. So I think that's going to be my main focus now, is just putting in for these really hard mule deer tags and see if I can make something happen.
That's awesome. I think you completed it. Even if you don't do anything else, you've already done, the apex of all of it in the West. To be honest, it was an amazing animal. It was absolutely amazing, and we'll post up some of the pictures and videos and stuff so guys can actually see what it is. But it's an incredible animal and an incredible hunt, dude. That was something else.
Yeah, it sure was. Sure was.
But no, Ted, we really appreciate you jumping on with us, man, and telling your tale. It was absolutely incredible. It was absolutely awesome, and hopefully you do get something else, and we can get you back on and get that world-class muley or whatever it is, and go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Absolutely, and for everybody else, thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor Drive.